We have a fantastic podcast for you today. We have three great guests, all talking about what role technology plays for content marketing. First, we'll be joined by Jeremy Legg, the CTO of Turner. Next, we'll have Paul Peterman, Head of Industry, Technology, and Connectivity at Facebook. And last, we have our own Karen Chepka, Senior Vice President of Corporate Business Strategy here at CTA. Enjoy! SiriusXM brings all the best commercial-free music plus sports, talk, comedy, entertainment, news, and more right to your car. And with streaming at home and on the go, that great stuff goes where you do. Visit SiriusXM.com to learn more. Hello and welcome back to CES Tech Talk. I'm your host, Jeff Joseph. I'm the Senior Vice President of Communications and Strategic Relationships with the Consumer Technology Association. For those of us who don't know us, we are the producer of CES, the greatest show on earth, coming up just mere days away. And of course, every year at CES, you see the latest and greatest in technology. And one of the trends you're going to see this year, one of the things we're going to be talking about is the changing state of video distribution, the way we watch our programming, the way we receive it, certainly continues to change. One of our studies, one of the things we do is a lot of consumer research, and one of our recent studies found that for the first time ever, the percentage of freed or paid streaming video subscribers, about 68%, has caught up to, it now almost equals the number of paid TV subscribers. So those who get their video content free or streaming video has caught up to the number who get it via satellite, cable, etc. Also, our study shows that for the first time, the time consumers spend watching video content on TVs, about 51%, is now equaled by the time they spent watching video on all other consumer technology devices, including laptops, tablets, and smartphones. And of course, if you look at those who are a heck of a lot younger than I am, adults who are between 18 and 34 spend about 55% of their viewing time on time-shifted content and only 45% on live, which of course is a lot different than the way I do when I was young. So what is all these changes? What do they mean for content distributors and advertisers? How is technology impacting how traditional linear video providers behave, how they provide content? You'll hear all this about this at C-Space at CES, but today I'm so pleased to welcome Jeremy Legg. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Turner Broadcasting System. Of course, you know Turner. The brands include CNN, HLN, TBS, TNT, Turner Classic Movies, Cartoon Network, which I love, Boomerang, Adult Swim, another great provider, and Turner Sports. In this role, Jeremy develops and oversees the execution of Turner's technology strategy. He directs their investments in infrastructure, and he manages their technology resources to maximize their business. He previously served as head of technology strategy at Turner. He had stints at AOL, Oracle, and Accenture. And in 2016, this is impressive, he received Broadcasting and Cable's Technology Leadership Award, and he's also received various awards from Multi-Channel News and Cable Facts. So, Jeremy, thanks for joining us today on Tech Talk.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Hey, well, let's jump right in. You know, as I noted, the technology landscape has changed so dramatically, particularly over the last decade. How have you seen your company evolve in response, and how has your specific role changed?
So, yeah, it has changed, very dramatically. If you rewind 10 years ago, most of the pay TV industry was still satellite delivered television. There was, barely on demand at that point, let alone kind of any sort of scaled video streaming on the internet. And so a whole host of things have obviously happened since then. You've got the launch of TV everywhere. You've got the change in way content rights were handled from not just being on a linear playlist, but to becoming available on demand, via the internet and via applications and what have you. And as all of that has, come to fruition, what we've done on the Turner side is really extend all of our brands out onto the internet, some of which were already there. I mean, CNN has had a scaled digital presence even as early as the 1990s.
Wow. But
other brands were more recent. And in doing that, we've deployed applications, on-demand content, live streaming across all of our brands to reach audiences across all these new platforms.
So as you look at those different applications and you have so many different brands, how do you maintain consistency in that digital online presence? So you still maintain the big brand, but allow each sub-brand to have its own personality?
Yeah, it's a great question. Being a horizontal function as a technology provider, across all of Turner's different brands, we really have to focus on platforms. So if you think of, a Netflix or you think of a Hulu or folks like that, at the end of the day, they really have one application and all of their technology is focused on one application. We have to support all of our linear broadcasting as well as all of our internet streaming across all of our associated brands. So we have to look at how we consolidate and have content management systems that are a platform, how we have direct-to-consumer capabilities that are a platform and leveraged across lots of different brands. Our video streaming infrastructure is the same way. So we are forced to have some economies of scale just because we have huge internet properties in NBA or CNN Digital, and then we have much smaller ones in the case of, say, a Turner Classic Movies. But at the end of the day, to move a video bit from point A to point B, it's largely the same whether you're talking about CNN or Turner Classic Movies. So you need platform infrastructure in order to do that at scale.
So it really sort of starts with that infrastructure investment and then plays out from there. But it's got the core. That's sort of the foundation.
Yeah, absolutely.
As it plays out. And how are you seeing consumers interact with that content? Do you see differences across the sub-brands and the way they interact, or is there a sense of consistency there as well?
It's very different brand to brand. So, if you take a Cartoon Network, you're talking about some of the earliest adopters that we have in our company to our content. And so the level of expectations around consumers, it's almost entirely digital. And then as you look at other brands, say a Turner Classic Movies, where the average age of that audience is older, you'll see more linear consumption than you would see digital consumption, for example. CNN is another interesting case in that the linear audience is, plus or minus about 10 years older than the digital audience. And so the expectations around content consumption, even under one brand umbrella, can vary based on the type of platform that people are accessing it from.
Sure. And you're cross-promoting across the linear and the digital, and you're seeing good interaction there?
Yeah, we do. You certainly see people that are on linear and also come to digital, but then you also have digital-only audiences, and you have linear-only audiences. So but then there's certainly a pool of people that do both.
So, and do you survey your viewers to sort of develop strategy? How do you figure out what's working and how that drives your overall strategy?
Yeah, so what we've done is really begin to make investments in data and data management platforms. And so we've got databases here with north of 1 billion anonymized users in them, and we now track content consumption so that we begin to understand the viewing trends both of linear as well as digital video consumption and or text consumption in the case of, say, a CNN. And so, based on that, we're able to adjust kind of the types of content that we provide, the level of personalization that we provide, and also just kind of knowing who your audience is. I would say the media industry in general wasn't very good at that until relatively recently.
As a result of that data issue, you think, or just sort of we know best?
Well, it's on television, for the most part, the media industry was a wholesaler, and the distributors, the cable companies or satellite companies, really maintained the direct-to-consumer relationship. And there was very little data that was provided back to programmers. And so that is now beginning to change. And then digitally, not in all cases, but in many cases, you didn't really have to sign in to access content. I mean, you do for TV Everywhere, for example. Right. But for the most part, you didn't really have to sign in and authenticate in the same way that you do for a Google or a Facebook or whomever. And so, programmers' abilities to understand who their audience is were kind of blunted for those reasons. That's now beginning to change. There's a lot of technologies embedded inside of television sets that provide data where you can really begin to understand viewing consumption that's outside of the set-top box. And similarly, as it relates to digital, there are various ways of now tracking consumption either on an anonymized or an opt-in basis to really understand how consumers are consuming content as well. And so that's been a big change for us over the last 3 years, and it's made a big difference in terms of how we build products.
It's interesting, it's that intersection of technology and media that we've seen over this past decade, and using some of that technology that's used on, or maybe put it this way, that your company, that media companies are now technology companies in a sense as well.
Yeah, I mean, we, I guess it's now been a little over 2 years, but I mean, we went out and formally bought a technology company. Mm-hmm. So, we bought iStream Planet, who, we really decided we needed to double down on video streaming because it was obviously a big component of the future. And so they provide video streaming for us, but they also provide video streaming for others across the industry, other media partners. And if you had asked me whether we'd be doing that, 10 or even 5 years ago, I would have told you resoundingly no.
Yeah, right.
And so now, we have, that component here. We've doubled down on that, and we're now laying out video streaming infrastructure kind of end to end to the consumer in the same way that we had done for linear for years and years before that.
It's an amazing change. With so many consumers now, they have this expectation of their mobile experience, and that drives a lot of their interaction with content. How are you addressing those expectations, both in terms of your digital strategy and are you seeing a parallel? Are you seeing that expectation drive your linear strategy?
So I'd say on our mobile strategy is certainly very different than our linear strategy. I would say on mobile a couple of things. One is we've made big investments in having an application platform. There are so many different devices that are out there that you can end up with so many code bases that are incredibly difficult to maintain. So we've invested in app platforms there to enable more rapid rollout of our products. We've also invested heavily in the instrumentation of the applications we build on that platform, and that's to collect the data and consumption habits associated with our applications, whether it's on tablets or phones, and even on connected devices as well. They're all to an extent part of the same family, even though you're using your thumbs on mobile devices and a remote on a connected device. Those things have all now, essentially created a consumer feedback loop with our products, where we can now look at, the viewership trends of, which platforms are driving the greatest amount of consumption, which platforms are going to monetize better than other platforms, which content is popular on some platforms versus other platforms. And so you really have to change yourself from kind of being a programmer who puts together a 24/7 playlist, and more into a product-based mentality as a company where you're delivering experiences to consumers. On linear, we haven't historically done that nearly as much for a couple of different reasons. One is as distributors generally define those consumer experiences. And then the second piece is that the technology on linear was candidly not as advanced as it was on digital, and so you weren't able to do that. That's now actually beginning to change quite a lot with some of the investments the distributors are making in their television platforms.
Right. You raise a fascinating issue. We've talked a lot about sort of the technology. We've talked a little bit about how it leverages or how it impacts your viewers and consumers of your content. The other leg here is advertisers. How are you leveraging your technology investments to show added value to your advertisers?
Yeah, so I think the advertising model on television has largely lived off of the fact that it's still the best vehicle to deliver a scaled audience at once. Whereas digital, people are all over the place across digital, so that aggregate consumption is very high, but actually getting to a specific audience at scale with one message is actually in many ways a bit more difficult. But what's now beginning to happen is that on television, some of these digital capabilities are coming forth, and so you're seeing that on set-top box VOD in terms of the ability to do different types of audience targeting. And I would say over the next couple of years, you're going to begin to see that on television, where the last mile of the managed network that distributors generally control is actually going IP. And when that happens, you're going to see addressable advertising on linear television in the way that consumers have seen it on digital.
Right.
The other piece is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. I was saying, we're very excited about Next Gen TV ATSC 3.0, which includes that IP address, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, that will certainly obviously be for broadcast, but you'll see this over not just for over the air signals, but for last mile signals, through the pay TV plants as well.
Yeah.
And so now what's beginning to happen is that you can begin to deliver less obtrusive types of advertising to consumers, where you don't have to sort of stuff everything into a 4-minute ad pod. You can have different executions that don't interrupt the viewing experience in the same way that it has historically. And then on the advertiser side, you can begin to get towards outcome-based types of advertising, where as you begin to understand who's watching your networks and who's watching advertising, you can begin to correlate the viewership to actions. Did they buy something on e-commerce? Did they buy something at retail? And that increases the efficacy of the advertising that we deliver for our advertisers.
It's super exciting for advertisers, sort of the promise of digital technology coming to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, the fundamental problem on pay TV, and less so on digital, but to an extent it exists there as well, is you didn't know who was watching.
Right.
And because you didn't know who was watching, then you were basically doing kind of predictive modeling about, whether someone bought something or not.
Yeah.
Now it's getting into more deterministic feedback loops of you actually know whether someone bought something or not. And at the end of the day, for an advertiser, that's what they want. And they want those types of outcomes. They're demanding those types of outcomes. The consumers, however, have to be balanced in this, obviously, because you don't want to simply stuff so many ads into a piece of content that it becomes an unwatchable experience. Mm-hmm. And so on the flip side of it is there's this balance between reducing advertising loads and then the effects on pricing, and then increasing advertising loads and the effects on consumer viewership.
Right.
And
it's trying to balance it, to strike that appropriate balance. We're running short on time, but I have two other questions. One is I was sort of reading a lot of the work that you've done and reading some interviews. You write and speak a lot about the race to the center, sort of the ultimate goal for disruption in distribution. What is that? What is the race to the center? Why is it so important?
Yeah, we basically view the race to the center as technology companies, classically, historically, technology companies, Google, Apple, Facebook, et cetera, making investments in content now, original content. They're now spending billions of dollars developing their own content. And then content companies sitting on the other side that are now having to make massive investments in technology. And my aforementioned comment about buying a technology company a couple of years ago is an example of that. And while I don't think content companies are going to spend as much money on technology as technology companies, and I don't think technology companies will spend as much money on content as content companies, they're both now spending quite a bit in each of those spaces, and it's moving us closer and closer and closer together. So you're seeing companies, for example, in the announcement that Apple just made recently of putting $1 billion into original content. Amazon has made similar types of announcements where they're going out and essentially becoming studios.
Right.
And then you have companies like ourselves that are buying and investing in video streaming infrastructure and data management platforms and all these other things. And so, eventually, the two parties are going to get closer and closer together, and then the consumer is going to determine which ones win and which ones lose. This has a ways to still play out. But the companies that think the most about the consumer, both from a tech and content perspective, I think eventually survive whatever shakeout is currently happening in the media industry and is playing out over the next couple of years.
That sort of plays into the obvious follow-up question: is how do you differentiate yourself in such a fragmented and it's a great time as a consumer on the one hand. Discoverability is always a challenge, but in general, there's so much great content from so many different sources. So how do you, as Turner, stand out?
Well, so I think there's a couple of different things. I mean, the one good piece about Turner is that we have such a diversity of content that we appeal to lots of different audiences, and it also cuts across live content and what we do for CNN and what we do for sports, as well as on-demand content that we do for our entertainment brands or our kids brands. So we feel pretty good about where we're situated. But, one piece of this is obviously continuing to make investments in great content. I mean, you can have all the best technology in the world, but if you don't have anything anyone wants to watch, that tech isn't going to really do anything for you. The tech side, however, is now increasingly on an equivalency in terms of it's important to the content. We have to be able to deliver content in ways to consumers that they want to watch it when they want to watch it. So we've got to be able to personalize networks. We've got to be able to personalize playlists. We've got to be able to enable advertising in ways that doesn't drive consumers crazy. And so all of those types of things we now have to do from a tech perspective, in addition to our core competency of delivering both live and on-demand content.
This is absolutely fascinating. This conversation will continue in just a few days at CES, C-Space, which is the home for content distributors, content creators, the marketing and advertising and entertainment community at CES, running January 9th through 12th, just a few days away in Las Vegas, Nevada. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. We'll see you in Las Vegas.
That sounds great. Look forward to it.
Great. Well, look forward to seeing you there. Make sure you download other episodes of CES Tech Talk. You can find us at ces.tech. And for all things related to the Consumer Technology Association, including our research on the changing habits of video consumption, visit cta.tech. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a few words from our sponsor. Listen at a whole new level with SiriusXM. It's the widest, deepest variety of commercial-free music. Plus, it's the brightest stars, most amazing sports, funniest comedy, most complete news coverage around, and more, delivered right to your car. And with streaming available at home and on the go, you can get your groove on wherever you are, because all that great stuff and more goes where you do. Yeah, it's awesome, right at your fingertips. Visit SiriusXM.com to learn more. Generally when people think of CES, you think of manufacturers, you think of retailers, engineers, tech executives, and so on. But the truth is, the show continues to expand to reflect different markets, different business segments, different areas. And one of the big areas of growth of the last few years has really been from the marketing and advertising community. Marketers and advertisers come to the show to learn about the latest trends, how technology can improve and impact what they do, and how to impact their own clients. They come to C-Space, which is a curated area specifically designed for the advertising, content, and creative types who come to CES, where they see curated exhibits, they have conference sessions, and networking opportunities for brand marketers, advertisers, digital publishers, social networkers, and entertainment executives. In fact, this has become so popular, it's actually grown over 300% in its first 4 years. Now, one person I expect you might run into at C-Space is Paul Peterman, who is our guest today. Paul serves as head of industry, technology, and connectivity for Facebook. And in this role, he helps develop and deliver marketing solutions that drive business impact for tech, for telco, and for B2B marketers. Prior to Facebook, Paul spent more than a decade in digital media. He's an expert in that area, where he led teams and partnerships with some of the world's most recognizable brands. In these roles, he's had the opportunity to navigate a rapidly changing and fragmenting media landscape, we all know about that, and help companies succeed by embracing new marketing and revenue models such as Facebook. So with that, let me welcome to our podcast, Paul Peterman. Paul, thanks for joining us today.
Great, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Good. So you have a unique perspective on CS and a unique perspective on sort of digital trends in marketing. And I know it's early, although the days are waning, and before you know it, we'll all be in Vegas, crowded together on a bus. As you look forward to that, what do you think will be some of the hottest technologies and products for the marketing community? What do you think they'll be looking at CS 2018?
Well, when I think about CES, first of all, I get excited about it because I feel like it's an annual celebration of the year ahead, and I look forward to kicking off the new year with the latest tech innovations and a look into the future. When I think about technologies at CES and I think about what marketers are going to be looking at, I think it's a chance to check out all the innovations going to be on display across a number of different areas. Things like connected automobiles, which is really pervasive across our industry, all the different use cases of what's going to happen there. Mobile screens of all types, from home automation to phones and tablets, AR, and other things of that nature. And ultimately, for a marketer, it's an opportunity to connect with the profound shift way people are consuming content. And this brings a new complex set of challenges for marketers who need to adapt their messaging and media strategies to get noticed and to sell products. So you can't really do that without being connected to the technologies that are going to be driving these shifts in the future.
So, Paul, as you think back to last year's show, to the 2017, to CES 2017, were there trends or specific technologies that have impacted the way you've done your business over the past year, that have impacted the way Facebook thinks about marketing or for your customers?
I think there's a couple things that come to mind. Number one, of course, the trend and the focus on mobile, and mobile not just being the first screen now, it's the screen. It's the most pervasive screen in our lives. And that has caused a lot of different trends in our industry, and especially as it impacts marketers. This technology is changing how consumer tech marketers create and deliver their messages to consumers. I'll give you actually an example with a consumer tech company who rolled out a really cool product last year, and that's HP with their Sprocket printer, which is an award-winning pocket printer that they rolled out. And how one of the things that we saw is they really adapted the way that they test and learn for their advertising content to optimize it for mobile. So this has resulted in really great results for HP. And the way that they did it, promote the sales of this new Sprocket printer, they developed a series of videos of different lengths and content based on objectives. But the idea was to try and understand like what type of marketing content would connect with millennials and their target audience and all these mobile devices that we're seeing all across CES. So they then use a variety of audience data to optimize for conversions. And so once they figured out which length videos would resonate the best, then they used a lot of different audience targeting technologies, and it resulted in a 15 times lower cost per order between the start and end of the campaign with Sprocket printers.
That's a serious reduction. That's real dollars.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we see this across the industry of people being able to use technology, the technology that we have, and then also just the change in consumption, the focus on mobile, to improve their marketing and be able to help them launch products more efficiently.
So you note mobile specifically, but what are your perspective on what are the other trends we started to see last year, and I think we'll see in a major way? It'll be all over the floor at CES 2018. There's areas of AI, artificial intelligence, and AR, VR. What's your perspective on these technologies, and how do you think these innovations will enhance the way that we create connections in the future?
Oh, absolutely. Let me start with AI first. So ultimately, artificial intelligence permeates everything we do at Facebook, from helping choose the right content for everyone's news feeds to helping things like messaging bots understand natural language questions, recognizing our friends and the photos that we share, and even keeping our communities automated moderation. So, but I think when we think about AI, it starts with people's expectations. People are expecting a more immediate experience today, and their desire for immediacy continues to grow. Nearly twice as many millennials as baby boomers cite 24/7 availability as the most important thing a brand can do to engage with them. So as a marketer, you have to be thinking about that. So we advise brands to consider using AI and automation to manage common tasks, from identifying products through imagery to managing common customer concerns through bots, because personalized, relevant content is really the future of marketing. Artificial intelligence and automation can help you by responding immediately, but it can also help you tailor your communications to that exact individual. And things like newsfeed that are AI-driven, and they've taught consumers that curated personal experiences are the norm. So delivering that same experience in your marketing can lead to higher engagement and conversion. And I'll give you a specific example, and that's with messenger chatbots. So Facebook Messenger is a really massive platform, and it's growing every single day. And the messenger chatbots are really an effective way to engage with customers and deliver delightful experiences. An example of a company doing this really well is T-Mobile. T-Mobile's built a chatbot that offers things like product and offers, plan details, and other instant things that their customers want. It also allows you to easily get to a human anytime you want to, because sometimes there's a need for that. But frankly, there's so much great info right there from the bot AI that you may not need to. And there are other companies doing this as well. Samsung has a bot where they have offers and setup tips and product recommendations and customer service. But what we've seen, and T-Mobile has talked about this publicly, is that it can actually be a much not only is it a delightful way to engage from a customer service perspective, but it can be a much more efficient way to actually drive new customer sign up than driving people to your own website. So that's how I think about AI. As we look further ahead, the future is certainly bright for VR and augmented reality because sharing is critical to the human experience. And since Facebook's birth, we've been looking for ways for people to share their experiences in greater, richer detail. And we started with text, and then we moved to picture, and we see a lot of live video and recorded video, and ultimately 360 video and VR. And we want to be able to build those tools for the future. So I think that we do think that brands and marketers need to think about immersive technologies like AR and VR. So while mobile devices are still expected to be the dominant consumer device moving forward, they also are enabling the technology behind these immersive VR experiences. So I guess I would be challenging marketers to ask themselves what unique challenges VR could solve for your brand versus what can your brand do to become part of that space, meaning try and think about how you could do something different with VR today or 360 video than just doing it just so you can say that you're doing it.
Right. It still needs to be organic within the brand promise and the brand itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're clearly experimenting with some of these technologies for your own branding and marketing, and helping some of your customers understand these. For our space, how are you helping consumer tech companies launch products? Are you using some of these technologies and educating them about that to help them actually launch products into your marketplace?
It's interesting. We work with I would say most of the companies at CES and are now an essential part of the product launches. And at the core of that is the fact that the product launch itself has changed for marketers. It for a while was really focused around that key launch period, which is still important, that 1 to 2 to 3 weeks right around the launch. But technology itself has changed it, and it's made it so that launches are more about a full result rather than just getting the word out there about your product. So full funnel advertising, really the holy grail of advertising, and it's not easy to do, but technology is making it easier and easier every single day. One example Sonos used a variety of Facebook solutions to execute a really effective full funnel marketing campaign that wouldn't have been possible just a couple years ago for their Playbase home theater speaker. And so we partnered with them, and they had a two-phase approach. So the traditional approach would be to really focus on awareness around launch. So that's what they did that. So during the first phase, they ran short video ads introducing their home theater speaker. And then it was aimed to increase awareness about the product, inspire people to revisit their home audio solution. But then the cool thing was that dovetailed right into a second phase, and where Sonos used dynamic ads and other ad formats to advertise a promotion for multiple products combined with Playbase to create a full home theater experience. And by rolling these campaigns out sequentially, they encourage people to think about their full sound system offering. And where it got them was a really great result. Not only were they able to drive big lifts in ad recall and brand preference, but they were able to drive a 19 times return on ad spend during the promotion period, and they reached about 19 million people. So being able to use data to target people who they were engaged with the first phase of their campaign, in the second phase of their campaign, and identify lookalike audiences of those people to find even more people like them. Like, this is really the future of the way that we should be launching products. And I think a lot of the tech companies are leaning in with us, seeing great results around that.
This sort of data-driven strategy, and that's always been the promise of digital media, right? That's the holy grail in the sense there, and it's why there's perceived to be greater value in digital marketing and then in some of the traditional marketing because of all the great data. How are you thinking about and innovating in that area of collecting data and helping to use it to drive your marketing and your customers' marketing efforts?
Yeah, I think it's really important to think about that. And it's not just data, it's really data and how it plays into everything else. Yeah. It's really the art and science of marketing. And there's never been a better time to be a marketer because you have so much at your fingertips today. So when businesses power their advertising with data, they're able to achieve their business objectives in a much faster way. And I think it's really critical because the competition I talked about earlier, we talked about the shift to mobile and the fact that you have to rethink how you're approaching your video content. And we also know that the competition for attention makes it critical that your message is relevant. So pairing the right products to the right people at the right moment requires a model that understands interests and behaviors at a massive scale. And then there's measurement. We have to prove it works. So we use our data from a measurement perspective, and we do that from a people-based approach. So we have the benefit of knowing who people are on our platform, and that allows us to rely on real people-based measurement rather than relying on proxies like cookies, which don't work very well in mobile environments.
Right.
So that helps the marketers measure real business results. So I think in today's market, as more and more consumers build out curated experiences on their devices, it's really critical. And I think it's an expectation that you're going to be able to deliver the right message to the person at the right time. People really expect that from brands. It's a hard challenge to live up to, but I think by combining that art and science, you can do it.
And do you find do you get pushback from consumers on that data-driven marketing? As a tech lover, a tech enthusiast, I love it. I love knowing that when I pull up my feed, there's going to be targeted content, and I learn about new products that I'm interested in because of that targeting. What are you hearing from your customer base?
Oh, I think there's a huge expectation that you're not going to waste their time, and that you're actually going to deliver something that's really meaningful to them. And I think it is. I just think it's more and more, and we're seeing it in every single medium. It doesn't really matter if you're watching TV or you're on Facebook or Instagram. It's really a suboptimal experience to be served an ad that it's just not relevant to you. So that drum is beating louder and louder.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. Those of us of a certain age, generation, who remember television advertising that would be this broadcast sort of thing versus, my kids who've grown up in this age of really targeted ads and serving up content that is of immediate or indirect interest to them. It really has completely changed the game. That's very cool. What do you see the biggest innovations for marketers to leverage as we move to 2018? We've seen movement in voice. We've talked a bit about AI and AR, VR. Are there other things that you're looking at? Other technologies?
Yeah, I think as we look ahead, we're seeing a clear signal from billions of people that it's messaging. And messaging sounds basic. Okay, we all message every day because it's an integral part of everybody's lives. But it's 60% say that messaging has changed the way they communicate, and more than that, say they would choose messaging over picking up the phone or sending an email. And what's fascinating about that study that we did recently is that's regardless of age. You would think, really? Like, okay, well, that's younger people. Like, no, that's everybody is saying that this is way better and a way more delightful experience. We know that these communication preferences and habits that we've developed or running our lives change our expectations. And it's also changed how people want to communicate with businesses. So businesses ultimately are run by people, and people run the world with the messages that we send. So how we're thinking about this is we have a strong presence in messaging. So WhatsApp and Messenger are some of the largest and strongest messaging apps in the world. When we look at the opportunity out there to capture the messaging opportunity, businesses should be establishing a presence across Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram Direct. They should be thinking about efficient communication to respond in a personal way to customers and re-engage them through efficient and scalable messaging. They should think about ways to get discovered using organic tools that we have available across Messenger and WhatsApp. And then you can also amplify that with advertising solutions to help build awareness, acquire customers, drive transactions, and actually drive people into delightful messaging experiences. And then after they've chosen to engage with you, maybe the product they were talking to you about went on sale. Like you could put that back in front of them in a messaging environment, and you could see really great returns. So I think that messaging has been around for a long time. but messaging as a marketing platform, that's really going to shine in 2018.
That is not at all where I thought you were going to go.
I think, first of all, I mentioned that I feel like it's this annual celebration of what's to come. And I love kicking off the new year with the latest tech innovations and a look into the future. For me, I'm lucky as a for technology and connectivity. I get to work with the most innovative companies on the planet every single day. And some of our best meetings are at CES. So I think there's opportunities to engage with people that are there. It's hard to do all of that in one place at one time, and you get to do that at CES. In addition to just those technologies that are on display. And again, it's from anything that has a mobile screen or is going to get people's attention and for consumption in the future, and being able to think about your marketing strategies through the lens of those technologies. I think it also just gets your juices flowing for like what's possible in the coming year. It comes at the right time. I know it's right after the holidays, and it comes up quickly, but it comes at the right time of year to be thinking about what you're going to achieve in the year ahead.
I like your answer that even as we spent so much time talking about AI, talking about the use of messaging platforms, that there's nothing that replaces sitting around with your customers, sitting around with your colleagues face to face and exchanging ideas and opportunities. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been Jeff Joseph with CES Tech Talk. We've been discussing C-Space, digital marketing, and the technologies impacting all of those. We hope to see you in January at CES 2018. For more information on C-Space and CES overall, visit us online at ces.tech. And learn more about CTA and all we do throughout the year to help grow and promote the industry, visit cta.tech. When most people think about CES, you may think of the coolest new innovations and products. You may think about keynotes. You think about networking, celebrity sightings, doing business, maybe catching a show or two, or however else you want to define how you have fun in Vegas. That's between you and your accountant. But until recently, you may not have thought of the show as a gathering place for marketing and advertising executives, or even the creative communicators from media and entertainment. Well, they've always been a part of CES. They've long been there. But with the introduction of C-Space in 2013, we gave them a specific home and destination at the show to network, to meet, and to collaborate. C-Space caters to creative communications, brand marketing, advertising, digital publishing, social networking, and entertainment execs who make their way to CES to learn the latest tech trends and how they impact their business. It's grown tremendously, over 300% in the first 3 years. And here to talk to me about C-Space and other things CES is my friend and Miss CES herself, Ms. Karen Chepka. Karen is our Senior Vice President for CES and Corporate Business Strategy. She's a 25-year plus years veteran of CES. She runs all things CES and also oversees our other standalone events. And so please join me in welcoming Karen to our podcast today. Welcome.
Hi, Jeff.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
I am tired but good. We are just a mere hours, I guess, in many ways away from CES. We're counting down. You've done this for a long time. Tell me a little bit about what you're looking forward to 2018. Bigger, better? I know you get calls from your friends saying, what are you excited about? What are you telling them? What's going to be great at CES 2018?
We have a lot of great things in store for this upcoming show in 2018, and there's a couple different areas that we're focusing on as far as new areas for us, and some of that I think you've probably heard in other podcasts talking about some of our smart cities area, our CES Sports Zone, where we're focusing more on the intersection of sports and technology and how that's changing everything from sporting equipment to the fan experience to venues to even sponsorships and branding. And so that's another new and exciting area for us. The other interesting area of growth is artificial intelligence, and it's kind of making its way into its own area at CES, but also we expect to see that throughout the show in different categories. So
there'll be
there'll be a specific marketplace for artificial intelligence, but we expect to see it also in the health area, in advertising and content, automotive. Kind of across the show. So it won't just be in one simple area. And then some of what we're talking about today is some of the growth that's happening over in the content and advertising marketing spaces.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. That's the jumping off point. I mentioned that we'd seen some of these executives at CES, but what drove You sort of ideated this with your team. What drove that ideation? What did you see that made you decide that we needed to develop this area?
One of the things that we started seeing a couple of years ago, which I guess now it's 2013, time just flies now. I don't know when you're having fun, right?
Having fun.
Was that we were starting to see more CMOs coming to the show. And so, it was folks from like Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, but also the advertising agencies and more of the digital media folks coming. So the Twitters, the Facebooks, but they really didn't need an exhibit, a traditional exhibit in the way that companies who were showcasing hardware products need. And so when we started really sitting down and talking with them, we realized that they really needed a place to do business, and they needed a headquarters, and they needed a place that they could tell their stories and that they could focus on the things that are affecting their industry, be that from storyteller sessions to kind of some of the different executives that come in and talk about case studies. And we realized, why are we making this group of people travel all over Las Vegas to get their business done? Let's create a headquarters for them. Let's create a centralized area, and that was the birth of C-Space.
So how are you defining it? Like, how do you determine who gets marketed to attend? What's the overall vision for the exhibit area and for the events?
So it's a couple different areas. So in some instances, there's companies that really are coming in to showcase sort of their product offerings to their customers for the next year, and a lot of this is in the digital space. There's also some experiential exhibits there. So people who are, focusing on showcasing maybe how their technologies are changing a trend, or in a sense, there's an area that is focusing on how advertising is changing, and kind of a showcase area of some of the different advertising works that have been created throughout the year. So a little bit of visionary. Some of it is more, here's what we have planned for the upcoming year, and how reaching the consumer via social media, or how using technology is affecting reaching your customer comes into play. And so we try to put all of that together in both some exhibit areas as well as in a conference program over at this destination.
So can you make that more tangible? Maybe you saw something last year that will give our listeners a better idea of what they can expect to see at C-Space. What sort of exhibits?
Sure. So, for instance, last year we had a couple companies that were in there showcasing sort of VR experiences and how VR is coming in content and storytelling. We also sometimes have some ad tech companies there showing the latest technologies, in the advertising world. So that's a little bit of some of what you'll see from the experiential side. And then there are certain companies that really do kind of set up more displays and showcase how how their offerings kind of work across multiple platforms. So you'll see some more specific companies doing things like that.
And how about the conference sessions? What can we expect to hear? Who will we hear from when we arrive in Vegas this January?
You'll see some of. Well, I shouldn't say see. You're going to hear from some of the. Yeah, you'll hear and see from some of actually some of the leading brands in this space. And so, a couple key announcements that we just made was that. We announced a new keynote session last week called Reimagining Television, and it's going to be the CEO of Turner Broadcasting and the CEO of Hulu talking a little bit about how their businesses are changing and how they're disrupting what the television model used to be. We have a sponsor of Variety that comes in and does a whole half-day track on conference programming, and one of their things that they're also looking at on part of their program is the future of television as well. So a lot on kind of how content is changing and how consumers' viewing habits are changing and some of the disruptors in that space. But then we also look at different case studies. And so we have everybody playing in that space from, Google to Facebook to even Turner again, looking at some of those types of sessions. We have IBM coming in with its team of Watson personnel to talk a little bit about how Watson's playing in the space and how IBM's transforming some different businesses. So it's really a variety of different types of content, sometimes talking about advertising in general, sometimes talking about how models are changing because of technology, and sometimes the different measurement devices that are being used to reach the consumers.
So it's everything from content development, distribution to that metrics piece of it, to measuring success and reach. And
absolutely. And then we even have folks like NBC Universal coming in and A&E Networks. Hearst, just showcasing some of their new lines of products coming out as well. So it's a little variety of everything, content and advertising.
So you can come and see marketing tech solutions as well as those consumer technology solutions.
Right.
That's really exciting. It's fantastic.
And then a lot try to tie in a little bit as to what's happening also on the floor. So so just like I had mentioned before, even though there is an AI marketplace, I expect that there will be conversations about how AI is impacting the advertising and marketing communities at C-Space.
Well, that's an interesting point, because I was going to ask you that question. Is there a downside to segregating this community? It's one thing to want that community and you want to talk and network with people you know and learn, but one of the great things I've always loved about CS is that serendipity and that ability to see connections that you may not have known existed. So how do you sort of deal with that challenge of giving them what they need, which is that concentrated, specific outlet, but still sort of encouraging them to see the rest of the show and take advantage of that serendipity?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that one of the things that we do is we do try to offer some different tours, and some of our actually customers that are in C-Space will bring the groups of their customers over to the floor to have more tailored tours to talk about how the in industries actually, or how technology is actually impacting their industry. So that way they kind of get more of a curated experience when they get over to the show floor and have a better sense of how some of those different technologies play out to their specific industry. The other thing that we're doing this year is we're also bringing some of the CES keynotes over to the Park Theater. And the Park Theater is adjacent to ARIA, so it's literally walking distance, 10 minutes from door to door. And so there will also be, I think, a greater chance for people who are have been traditionally staying in the C-Space area to come over and see people like Brian Krzanich and Jim Beckett-Ford, and kind of have a little bit more of of the experience of kind of what some of the other keynotes are also covering at CES.
Before we close, I've got to go to my favorite subject around CS, and it's a natural, of course, and that's basketball. Because everyone thinks of CS and you think of basketball, right?
Of course.
So two areas there. One, let's talk a little bit more about the Sports Zone, and I believe we're bringing back Inside the NBA will be back.
Yes, they will. They'll be broadcasting live from the show floor on Thursday. That's absolutely true.
And we're doing a larger Sports Zone, sports exhibits around all this.
We are, and so yes, so our Sports Zone will actually also include some other technologies, other products that are coming out into market, be it sports gear and or other things, some of that I can't talk about as of yet. But
not even on our podcast.
Not even on our podcast.
Oh,
but also expanding the conference programming part of that to 4 days, and one looking at basically or two days of the program looking at the technologies that are impacting sports world, and then the actual business of sports and how that's changing because of the technologies. So that will be a more expansive and in-depth dive into what's happening from the sports tech world. And then we also just announced our celebrity ambassador.
That's
imagine
that's where I was going next.
And imagine that you had the foresight to know that he was an ex-NBA All-Star, right?
I am who I am, Karen. I'm a nerd in many ways.
But yes, we just announced Baron Davis will be our celebrity ambassador, and he was kind of an interesting choice for us because he straddles both the content world as well as the sports world, and so seemed incredibly the right person to pick for this year's show, where we're amping up both the content side of it and the sports side of what we're doing.
Just talk quickly about ambassadors for our listeners to understand. What is the role? What is Mr. Davis going to do? What is the Baron going to do?
So what he gets to do is he gets to come and really get an opportunity to experience the tech and see not only just the tech in the areas where we in sports and let's say in C-Space, but we'll take him throughout the floor, and he gets to give an opportunity to kind of help bring that into those who cannot come to the show. So talk a little bit about what he sees from the different opportunities, to also just get to experience some products for the first time and give his thoughts on how it will potentially change either the content side of the world or the sports side of the world, which he kind of straddles.
Very cool. It's great. Well, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for being our guest today, talking a little bit about CES 2018, C-Space specifically, the home for the entertainment, content, advertising, marketing, digital marketers, everyone in that community.
Everything C.
Everything C at CES and beyond. My guest today has been Karen Chepka. She is the Senior Vice President for CES and Business Strategy with CTA. And thank you for joining us on this version of the CES Tech Talk. I hope you'll continue to join us. Don't forget to subscribe and download all our great segments so you can know what's going to be the hottest, most interesting, most fun, both products, technologies, and trends that you'll see at CES 2018 running January 9th through 12th. 2018 in Las Vegas, Nevada, right around the corner. You ready? You packed?
I'm excited. I got my shoes.
She's excited. Well, for those of you who don't follow Karen on our social media accounts, you need to follow just for the shoes alone and get some great tips. So thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned for the next CES Tech Talk, and thank you for joining me again. SiriusXM brings all the best commercial-free music plus sports, talk, comedy, entertainment, news, and more right to your car. And with streaming at home and on the go, that great stuff goes where you do. Visit SiriusXM.com to learn more. Thank you for listening to CES Tech Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can get more information on the CES show in January at ces.tech. Our show is produced by Tina Anthony. John Lindsay is our sound engineer. And me, I'm Jeff Joseph.